So Squid Game, am I late to the party? Yeah, and quite frankly, I don't have an excuse. I had loads of time to make this, and all that time sure did go somewhere. Now, I certainly have some criticisms of Squid Game, and if you've seen it, you probably know which bits I'm talking about, you dirty dog. But I think basically any show with an episode that you actually need to take some time out to emotionally recover from is probably doing something right. Or episode 6, which I'm not about to spoil, don't worry if you haven't seen it, is famous for its emotional impact on the audience. I still haven't recovered from it, and it came out in September. Even now I'm only able to cling on to my fragile sanity by taking solace in the fact that soon all of the plastic will become. And now I think that Squid Game is only really able to reach the heights that it reaches due to the strength of its characters. Would episode 6 have had the same emotional impact on you if you hadn't already had time to grow emotionally attached to the people it's about? Maybe. I don't know you, but the character writing is good anyway, so I'm gonna praise it now, and you don't get a choice in this, because it's stuff I'm doing. After a brief opening scene that'll make you say, God, I hope I wasn't supposed to understand all those rules, we get introduced to Gyun. As a very important character in the show, one of the main roles the first episode plays is to teach us about him. The Squid Game, whatever that is, doesn't even start until 30 minutes in. Everything before that point, except for the recruitment scene, is us just seeing a day in the life of Best Boy. A full half hour of us just getting to know this guy we're going to be spending a lot of time with going forwards. To start off, we see that he lives with his mum and depends on her for food and money. Not only is it made clear by the way he speaks to her that he takes her generosity for granted,
닭은 한 마리 세 먹이고 와.
치킨만 먹여. 생일인데 선물이라도 하나 사줘야지. 좀만 더 줘봐.
but as soon as he's left home alone, he also steals her bank card for some extra cash, with a smile on his face as he does it. Thanks subtitles, but I can handle this one. So what does he do with the money he steals? In the scene with his mum, it was established that apparently he's in a lot of debt.
아이고, 그까는 뭐도 너 대출 받은 한 달 이자도 안 된다.
And we just established that apparently he has a daughter he wants to buy a birthday gift for, so obviously he bets it on a horse. Now, I wouldn't blame you if you were already forming a very clear impression of Gyun in your head. So far, he appears to have made all the most entitled, selfish, and irresponsible decisions he could. If they continued to characterize him in that way, and that's all he ended up being, you'd have a perfectly acceptable character. You'd have a pretty good idea of the kind of person this guy is and the kind of thing that he's likely to do, and you could be totally ready to watch an entire season of the entitled adventures of irresponsible asshole man. A guy who pairs the money he got under the pretense of spending it on his daughter for her birthday with the money he stole from his elderly mother to fuel his gambling habit. With that, you would already have a more fully formed character than loads of the characters in loads of the things that I've already criticized for their piss-weak characterization. But then Gyun wins on a horse. He collects his winnings of 4 million won, which is about $3,000 US, and then the second he feels he has money to spare,
감사합니다.
아메리카노 한 잔 사드세요.
hang on. He gave this random woman some of his cash. Then he just leaves? Doesn't look like he stands to gain anything from this. In a poorly written story, this could be an inconsistency. It actually later on ends up being plot significant that he gave this woman money. So some lesser writer who doesn't care as much about their craft, I'm not going to name any names, even though you're thinking them, might have just tried to write a selfish character who at one point in the story just selflessly gave away some money anyway. Because, you know, the characters don't have to act within character all the time. That was a joke. They do actually. A character taking a selfish action and then just a few moments later taking a selfless one could be incongruent. But people, like real people, are very rarely as simple as just selfish or selfless through and through. We've only seen a small glimpse of Gyun so far, and he's not an inconsistent character. He's a complex one. He leaves the gambling zone and immediately calls his daughter, telling her about all the cool, expensive stuff he's gonna buy her. This lets us see what he prioritizes as soon as he has a more substantial amount of money to spend. There's loads of stuff he could have done here. He could have continued to gamble with his winnings, he could have spent the money on himself, or he could have put the money towards paying off his debt. But he ends up having no choice what he does with the money as he's been tracked down by loan sharks, who he runs from. As he's making his escape, we get yet more characterization for him as he bumps into this random stranger. Despite the fact that he's got some very important running to do, he stops to make sure that she's okay. He may do it in a rush, but he still stops to pick her drink up for her. Maybe if he hadn't stopped to do that, he would have gotten away, but he gets caught. And these loan sharks are some genuinely scary and violent dudes. They even brought a knife and a bowl. Their violence really goes to show just how much he was risking by stopping to help. Although he was actually risking a lot more than he thought because that passerby actually pickpocketed him. Instead of the 4 million he thought he had, he now has no money to pay the loan sharks, and they force him to agree to give up his body parts if he can't pay them by a certain deadline. So we've now seen what Gyun does with a little bit of money. We've seen what he does with a lot of money, although interestingly that apparently still wasn't enough to pay off his debts.
나머지는 제가 다음 달까지 꼭.
Now we're about to see what he does when he has absolutely no money. We're about to see his desperation and how it manifests. So he turns to the guys who were just threatening to harvest his organs and asks,
죄송한데 10,000만 빌려주시면 안 될까요?
if any of them have got a cheeky 10 grand on them that he can borrow. They all just laugh in his face, forcing him to make his way back to the lady he gave 10 grand to earlier and ask if he couldn't possibly get it given back.
죄송한데 아까 드린 10,000원 좀.
Just through the performance here in the original Korean, you really get the sense that he understands just how much he's putting aside his dignity in these moments. But to be fair, what does this lady know about dignity anyway? She has 2 separate versions of Internet Explorer pinned to her taskbar! Wow, an Internet Explorer joke. I must have posted this video using. He so clearly hates taking back the money that he generously gave, but was still willing to do it. The next thing I say is an episode 6 spoiler. You have been warned. Seeing how he'll willingly grit his teeth and put doing what's dignified to one side out of desperation is very important to establish now. If we're gonna understand the way he thinks by the time episode 6 rolls around and puts him in a similarly but much more extremely desperate situation with a similarly but much more extremely undignified way for him to get out. He wanted the 10,000 won because he still wanted to buy his daughter a birthday treat. Seeing the depths that he's willing to sink to just to avoid disappointing his daughter on her birthday isn't just powerful in this episode, it doesn't just set up how he is willing to grit his teeth and put what's dignified to one side. On top of both of those things, it also sets up very naturally just how much he cares about his daughter. Another aspect of his character that'll be important going forwards. What he does next is interesting from a character perspective as well. You might assume that now he's been stripped of all his money except 10,000 won, that he's just going to surrender to buying his daughter a birthday meal and a small present, something that he can afford with that money. But he goes back to what is in many ways a gambling equivalent and tries to win her a present with a claw machine. Similar to the gambling, this is a risk-reward strategy. He could get rewarded for this, but there's a very strong chance he's just throwing away his money. Like a Disney Plus customer buying Premiere access, but like, if there was a chance to get a reward. Gyun wins a prize and takes it with him when he's taking his daughter for a birthday meal. This scene is really great at naturally teaching us about more of Gyun's wants, needs, and priorities. If it wasn't already clear, this scene makes it exceedingly apparent that he just wants to be a good dad. He does a certain amount of trying to hide his true situation. When he starts to worry that his daughter has noticed the injuries he got from the loan sharks, he says that he was just bitten by a massive mosquito.
아 이거 왕모기한테 물린 거야.
I've just come join me in Aberdeen, mate. Not only do we not have mosquitoes here, I was punched in the face is also a perfectly acceptable thing to just drop into a conversation. This is my favorite stock photo, it's hilarious.
아빠 담배 끊었어.
He also tells her that he quit smoking, despite the fact that earlier we saw him with a suspiciously cigarette-shaped object in his mouth. And when she smells him and is like, well, you have been smoking, you little fuckboy. He's like, well, I'll quit soon, I promise. When the birthday present he got her turns out to be a gun by mistake, it's okay, don't worry about it. He adamantly promises that he'll get her a better present next year. And when his daughter tells him that her stepdad took her out for a meal at a steakhouse, Gyun clearly feels inadequate that he can't provide the same kind of expensive food.
아빠가 미안해. 가영이 더 맛있는 거 사주려고 그랬는데.
He never explicitly states that he wants to be a better father for his daughter but feels held back by his situation. He never says that that's something incredibly important to him, but what we actually see is him calling her as soon as he has enough money to buy a properly expensive treat for her. We see him running from loan sharks so that he can keep that money to spend it on his daughter instead of using it to pay off his loans, despite how dangerous those loan sharks are. We see how he desperately tries to look like a strong, responsible figure with his life together in front of her. We see how he tries everything within his power to not just buy her a birthday present and a birthday meal, but something that she'll really properly remember and appreciate. and when he eventually feels that what he's actually provided isn't good enough, he apologizes to her. On his way back home, he gets recruited for the Squid Game, a process which involves him getting given some more money, and with this money he buys some food, and tries to be generous by giving a tip to the lady he bought it from, and in the street on his way home meets a hungry cat who he gives some fish to. When he gets home, he gives some of the money to his mother, reimbursing her for the money he took, although he doesn't tell her that he took some money. He's just like, hey, here's some money for no reason. So that's the opening of this show. 30 minutes that exist just to be like, hey, here's this guy, here's the kind of person that he is, we're going to be spending a lot of time with him, so you may as well get to know him now. This episode is just absolutely brilliant at what it does. If you want an example of excellent characterization, look no further. The first important thing this episode does to teach you about Gyun is reinforce patterns of behavior. We don't just see him gamble one time, we see him fall back on similar things repeatedly whenever he feels he doesn't have enough money. There's not just one scene to show you he cares about his daughter. The love he feels for her and the kind of father he clearly wants to be is woven consistently throughout the events of the episode. It doesn't just have him do one generous thing one time and then maybe have some other character talk about how generous Gyun is. We see him commit to acts of generosity enough times that we don't just learn he's a generous person. We can do much more than just write the word generous in a bulleted list of basic character traits. We see the circumstances under which he's likely to be generous. We see how it makes him feel to be generous. We see how his generosity interacts with other character traits that we're also learning about. He doesn't give away the 10,000 won he has. He really needs that, and it's not very much. But whenever he's doing a little better for himself, on several occasions he just spontaneously decides to give stuff away. And whenever he does it, he has a huge smile on his face. It genuinely seems to make him happy just to make others happy. Just knowing that he's generous would be nowhere near as meaningful as seeing all of this. But this also plays into and interacts with another character trait he has. Gyun lives in the moment and isn't willing to accept that his circumstances prevent him from living the lifestyle that he wants to live. He couldn't actually afford to give any of that money away. There are fucking loan sharks threatening to steal his eyes! And his main priority is still trying to buy an expensive birthday present and meal for his daughter, to reimburse his mother for the money he took, or to give a random lady some extra cash because he feels like it. The long-term reality of the situation, no matter how dire, doesn't seem to sway him from still acting like he wants to in the here and now. It's only when the negative aspects of his situation are unavoidably near that he falls to desperation, that he starts to accept that he needs to act now to improve things for himself. It's not until his problems are staring him in the face with a knife and a bowl that he finally accepts, okay, I should probably give this money to you guys. Now this is a character. You don't just have a plank of wood or a bulleted list of attributes that you technically know he has. You have a guy with different beliefs, traits, motives, drives, and attributes, all of which come together and interplay to bring you a fully formed person. And the story of the episode is built from the ground up to naturally showcase as much of this character as it can. This is the second important thing that the episode does to characterize Gyun. It puts him in lots of different situations so that you can see how he acts in all of them. If the episode started by just showing him watching TV for 30 minutes, he could be totally within character that whole time, but you still wouldn't learn anything about him. Seeing the same character traits interact with lots of different situations is what really allows the show to flesh him out as a person. For example, he didn't really need to win that 4 million won for the plot of this episode to work. With only minor adjustments, you could easily make the episode play out pretty much the same way if right at the start he'd lost all of his money gambling. Think about it. If he never got that 4 million won, he still wouldn't have any money to pay the loan sharks, and he'd still end up in the desperate situation of just having to find some way to get any money to pay for a present for his daughter. Sure, he has to find another way to get the 10,000 won that he ends up using in the claw machines, but that shouldn't be too hard to write. He could put his tail between his legs and beg a friend for the money. Any number of things are possible, so why does he get 4 million won only to lose it again a couple of scenes later? Well, by seeing him in all different kinds of diverse situations over the course of these 30 minutes, we learn much more about him than we would just seeing him in the same situation for those 30 minutes. If he never got that money, we would have missed out on that first act of generosity. We'd have missed out on seeing his confidence and happiness and attitude when he thinks he's going to be able to be the kind of father he wants to be. We'd have missed out on the fact that he still prioritizes being that kind of father over paying off his debts. In that version of the story, he'd be running from the loan sharks because he actually had no money, and that wouldn't tell us anywhere near as much about him. This episode is expertly crafted to give you as much insight into a character as it can within the time it has. It is spectacular spectacular. Now we have 8.5 episodes left to see what they do with this character, what kind of stuff they put him through and what kind of journey he goes on. And he's joined by several other characters who are just as well realized and just as much real people as he is. And some other characters too. Man, Mr. Beast recreated the entirety of Squid Game in less time than it took me to talk about the characterization for 15 minutes.